at a store in my neighborhood. I was looking for a video to look at while I was signing Christmas cards, and I was browsing the aisles when a young father from across the store yelled, "Kathleen, you've got to do better. You're wasting our money." So both of these, he was having a bad moment, what can I say? But both of these interactions remind me of my ambition and my duty as Premier. They serve as reminders of why we're creating more opportunity and security, building a stronger economy and a more fair Ontario.
So that was the Premier of Ontario at an event today in downtown Toronto, and I'm so glad that the cast and characters that were there to witness the Premier's speech found that so amusing, because that anger and frustration from that one guy in that video store is really encapsulated by millions of Ontarians across this province. May not be in downtown Toronto, but certainly in the 905 area. Candice Malcolm is the Ontario Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and Rebecca Thompson is our Sun News contributor and used to work on Parliament Hill for the Prime Minister. One of the reasons why we show that clip is because we've heard so much in the past few weeks, especially since the Auditor General's report, Candice, about the arrogance of this government. They're out of touch. You know, after how many years in office, they've lost ideas and they have no clue what to do with the economy. They are now starting this faux war with the federal government, but now the feds come out and say, hey, you're going to get $1.3 billion in extra cash. What's the latest on this?
Well, you know, I'm glad that they could have a good chuckle about the outrage that exists out there, and I'm sure the Premier gets that a lot. There's a lot of people, you know, it's one scandal after another in Ontario. We're just recovering from one thing when the next thing comes out, and I think this was a good move by the Harper government, by Joe Oliver, to come out and explain to people the equalization formula and the fact that Ontario is actually getting a good deal, despite what Charles Sousa and Kathleen Wynne continue to complain about. Nothing's changed. This is based on a formula. It's based on a very complicated mathematical formula, the equalization transfer payments, but in fact there hasn't been anything different. There wasn't anything different last year, and Sousa complained at great lengths about that. So I think it was a good move by Oliver to explain and to come out in front of this and say, you know, regardless of what Kathleen Wynne and Charles Sousa might tell you, they're actually getting the exact amount that they should based on the complicated equalization formula.
Do you think, Rebecca, that look, the average Ontarian doesn't give a you-know-what about transfer payments and this, that, and the other thing. But what they do understand, in spite of handing this Liberal government a surprising majority, bigger majority than she went into it, obviously, in spite of that, I think that man that talked to her, and I suspect that he had far more choice words for her than the Premier's conveying, but that said, I think there's a lot of people that sort of maybe look at the Prime Minister and be like, yeah, don't give her any more of our money. Yeah. Stop it.
Up until 2009, Ontario was the only province in Canada that was a have province, that had never collected equalization payments from the federal government. That year, remember the Ontario Liberals were elected in 2003, that year they got $347 million. This year, as part of the announcement that Joe Oliver just made, they're getting $2.4 billion. This is a government that, and you know, if you look at their annual revenue, or annual spending, they've increased spending year over year to the highest amount that Ontario has ever seen. Per capita, they are spending more than ever before, and yet they have to be collecting equalization payments. They're now #1 in Canada for collecting federal transfer payments. That speaks to something. You know,
they've surpassed Quebec on collecting transfers
as of this
year.
Yeah.
Wow.
So here's the challenge: is that whether you're working in a video store or whether you're a major accountant working for one of Canada's major banks, a spreadsheet, an accounting spreadsheet is an accounting spreadsheet. If you can't add things up, if you're spending more than you're earning, than you're bringing in, then there's a problem.
You know, the fundamental problem, of course, is the entire equalization, and I don't want to bore everybody, Candice, but the equalization formula, it's inherently unfair. Premiers all across Canada, whether it be Wall in Saskatchewan or Wynne in Ontario. Everybody says it's inherently unfair. It doesn't matter who's in charge federally, Chrétien, Harper, Martin, it doesn't matter. None of that matters. The system is what it is. No one wants to touch it because it's such a hot potato.
Right, and in 2014 they actually had an opportunity to negotiate it. It was reopened. 2014 was the year, and unfortunately we didn't really see any reforms from the Harper government, only to increase it. They've increased the actual program by almost 50% since they came into office. So everyone agrees that it's not quite a fair program. You know, the recipients don't like it; they want more. The donor or giving provinces feel like they're getting a bad deal. And the biggest problem to me is that there's no contingency. So you have well-managed provinces like Alberta and Saskatchewan who get penalized for having, you know, good economic development, job creation, all these well-run factors, and then provinces like Ontario, Quebec, and some of the maritime provinces are recipients and they get rewarded for their bad behavior.
Yeah.
So there should be some kind of a balanced budget provision, because otherwise you just have these provinces that are wasting away money and still getting money from taxpayers in other
I can
provinces.
just imagine, because all of the finance ministers across Canada met yesterday to talk about this. I can just imagine the Alberta and Saskatchewan finance ministers biting their tongue when Ontario and Quebec said, you know, hand out please, we deserve this extra money, especially Ontario, of course, whose
Well, and
finances
because they've all read the Auditor General's report.
Especially after
They've
the
seen
Auditor
it.
General
Yeah.
report comes out with billions of dollars wasted away.
It's astonishing. Quickly though, was it smart for Harper and Oliver to get out in front of this, and now they're not going to have to go into the holiday season with all these headlines that Wynne is writing these, you know, love letters to come meet me, please, Stephen?
Absolutely. I mean, the best solution is to give Ontario more money, although it's shameful that the federal government has to go to that level, because Ontario can't manage its finances. But look, what does Kathleen Wynne have to say? They're getting their more money. They're part of a major infrastructure program from the federal government. What more do they want? And what could Kathleen Wynne possibly, you know, ask for from the Prime Minister in a meeting?
I'm just going to throw this out there to both of you. Whoever wants to jump on this first can respond. I want to read a tweet from my friend Robert Benzie from the Toronto Star. Here's what he had to say earlier. Liberals have told quadriplegic candidate Andrew Olivier they do not want him for upcoming Sudbury by-election. He is very upset. He went on Benzies went on to tweet that the Liberals say he offered him a job or an appointment to step aside and threatened to appoint a candidate if he refused. Let's have you weigh on this first,
So
Rebecca.
I just read Andrew Oliver's Facebook post on this, and first of all, he was called by the kingpin of the fundraising effort of the Ontario Liberal Party, and he was excited, he says, to get a call from such a senior guy, only to learn that, well, we want somebody else for this. And he said, absolutely not. You know, I already have a job. I don't need you giving me a job. I want to run for the nomination. Then, Adrian, he got a call from Kathleen Wynne herself.
Oh boy.
Asking for him to step aside to support the candidate that they want in that spot, and that surely that there's a job or an appointment up his, you know, down the road for him. He said, no, I want to run for this nomination. And then finally he gets another call from another senior person, clearly on the party political side, who is at this point, according to Andrew, bullying him to step aside. And he has now come out and said, enough is enough. What happens to the grassroots nomination process? I want to run. Let me run. This is ridiculous.
Okay, obviously taking a cue from Justin Trudeau a little bit, Candice, but sort of now the last bit of information we have to the story is the PC Party of Ontario has now sent a letter to the new OPP commissioner looking for an investigation because offering someone to step aside for a don't run in lieu of an appointment, that's a no-no.
Right, and if that's actually the case, if this is all true, you know, that's definitely, you know, in breach of a lot of the rules that are put in place. I think that there's a lot of corruption and rot in this Liberal Party, and it's seeping out in all different parts of, you know, finances, government finances, with the nominations themselves. I think that, you know, after 10 years or so in office, it's really starting to show that this government doesn't really have a lot of regard for everyday Ontarians, and, you know, especially taxpayers in this province.
Well, it certainly adds to the narrative of arrogance when it comes to the Ontario Liberals.
Okay, that's the word of the year for the Liberals, arrogance. All right, big thank you to Candice Malcolm and Rebecca Thompson.